Hi, everyone. Sorry, a few minutes later than scheduled. I got Zoom fatigue. How's everyone doing? Hello, hello. Yeah, thank you, Danny. If you can figure that out, that would be great. Okay, we're here for the workshop running a freelance design business. If you're in the right place, and I hope you are. Let's give our people a few more minutes. While we wait, if you can share in the chat where you calling from, and yeah, where are you calling from in the world? Minneapolis. Ah. Oh, Annapolis in Ontario. Wow. Yeah, we're all from all over, yeah. Very good stuff. Okay, let's give people 2 more minutes and then we can get started, okay? Okay, I think we can get started. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm really excited that you are here. Just looking at how diverse we are across different geography. Really excited that you're choosing to be here. So this meeting is going to be recorded. If you feel like you don't want to be recorded, I would totally be, I would totally understand. So in that case, please feel free to drop off. But we should have 20 or so people sign up for this. So I'm hoping that we can send out a recording of the meeting of the workshop afterwards, if it's helpful for people. So the topic of today's workshop is how to run a design freelancing business. And I'll talk a little bit about why am I talking about this in a little bit. What I'm hoping to do is to go over a top level, very hopefully practical tips on how to set up, how to run this design business, but then spend maybe half of the call taking questions, because I do believe that when we do have practical questions and answer, it tends to work better, right? It tends to be much more relevant. Yeah. So just a thumbs up or something of, if you, anyone can just tell me if you can see my doc on screen. Cool, awesome, great, started. Yeah, thank you. All right, so let's go into it. Present. Struggling a little bit today. Bear with me, team. Thank you. Just trying to organize my desktop so that you don't get distracted by the million tabs that you have, or I have, hence the view there. Okay, cool. So my name is Thu Do, and I am based out of New York. I asked a couple of you where you're calling from. I've been in New York for the last 12 years, working in design, specifically UX design. And I haven't really worked elsewhere besides the fact that, some of the clients are global. But Nova Scotia, yeah, one of my teammates is from Nova Scotia, and he's operating out of there right now. So welcome. So I have been kind of in the States. I'm originally from Vietnam, in the States for about 15, 17 years-ish. Have my background in design, graphic design specifically, and then went to business school because I wanted to run my own business and I wanted to, do design that is purposeful, really. And then spend the last, oh, you're gonna start seeing Slack. Let's quit that. Spend the last, like I said, 10, 12 years across different type of organizations. So a big stint in agency, advertising agency, actually, innovation product consultancy. And then in the last 4 years, I've kind of just branched out and start my own company in technology, and now with Taylorroo Collective, which I'll touch on very briefly, kind of leading that and being a part of that team. So I'll encourage that every one of us, if you want to, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm usually responsive on there. And overall, I would just love to, follow your career, get connected, and help in any way that I can. So take a minute, right? Go find me. Feel free to connect. So a little bit about what I'm doing right now and why this is relevant to this topic. So about a year and a half, almost 2 years now, I started a collective called Taylorroo Collective. And we are a group of researchers and designers working on humanity-driven projects. Now, what does that mean? That means that we're working on, impact, do good, project that has to do with sustainability, human craftsmanship, game and play, and neurodivergent. We want to design for and enable more people to design for more type of abilities, right? And to preserve humanity, advance humanity with technology. And so our team right now is growing. We have about 20 people around the globe, and largely in 3 buckets. The collective is where we do a lot of the freelance work, hence this conversation. We work with startup accelerator to bring their ideas to life through research and design. We have an arm for technology where we create our own tech in the spaces that I just talked about. And then the learning bit is where this conversation and this workshop comes in which we believe that, knowledge should be shared freely and to a certain extent, to be able to practice what we preach and involve more creators such as yourself into the freelance process. And why freelance? We believe that it allows us to move quicker. We believe that, as a collective, we can really be, I was talking to someone on my team today, be a nomad and work anywhere in the world and be good with it, right? So here are some of the projects that we have. Again, the website is taylorroo.studio. if you Google search Taylorroo Studio or Taylorroo Collective, you should find us. But yeah, feel free to reach out if you're interested in any of the above, and happy to share more. So the reality of this conversation is that, aren't you a little bit tired of hearing about the pandemic? But it's true, right? Everyone is working remotely, even if you are going back into the office. Some people are still choosing to work remotely. And certainly the gig economy, especially design freelancing, has been becoming an increasing hot career, I would say, especially from my experience of recruiting and talking to people in the community. I think there's a sense of freedom, a sense of ability to choose the kind of project that you want to work with and the kind of people and environment that you want to work with, right? So I think what I want to kind of instill from this conversation is that freelancing, of course, has a lot of perks. It has a lot of downside, but it should be very clear of what is it that you're trying to get into, right? What freelancing is often one of the options out there, right? You can do full-time, you can do full-time contract, right? So full-time permanent is different than full-time contract. You can work for different agencies, like I said, consultancy, startup, or you can decide to go out and run this freelance design business on your own. And sometimes the question become, what do you mean I really need the experience before I can get the job? And then in order to get the job, to get the experience, is a little bit a chicken and egg situation, right? Where did you get the experience from, and how do you do that? I will say that if you have a good portfolio, it doesn't matter if you went to a good school, if you worked in the field for a long time. Your portfolio in the design field, especially, I can speak for UX design, UX UI, product design. I won't dare to speak for, interior designer or product designer in terms of hardware product designer. But in the digital world, if you have a good portfolio, that's it, right? You don't need school, you don't need years of experience, you can get it. So understanding that, the freelance design world is a very independent option among all the other options, and it's really experience driven or portfolio driven. I love to touch on very quickly, what it is and what it is not, from my experience and from the collective experience of freelancers. It allows, flexibility is the thing, right? Going into freelance, I can decide one day that, hey, today I'm going to cut off my workday at 3 p.m. I'm going to go take care of other things. The other side of that is that it's not structured, right? While it's flexible, it's not structured. So I wouldn't have, a set schedule. I wouldn't have a set benefit package, right? It's definitely when it's fluid, it is very fluid. Versus a permanent full-time job allows the structure, allows the permanency, but it doesn't allow the freedom of movement, right? A perks, in my opinion, freelancing as well, is the ability to choose the kind of project that you want to work in. So I remember working in ad agencies, and not to ditch ad agencies, but there were times where I was like, I don't know why I'm working on this project. I don't know if I should be selling this product, right? Versus in freelancing world, you could have a very strong sense of value, as often with the collective and with my kind of work, where we only take on projects that further humanity, right? We don't take on, like I will say it on tape, we're probably not going to take on an oil and gas client, for example, right? Now, the other side of that is, And with that, with freelancing, you can then choose a project and then have a wide range of projects in your portfolio. So I honestly think that it's very good for your career and your portfolio to be able to freelance, even if you are working full-time elsewhere, right? Now, the other side of that is, of course, you jump in between projects wouldn't necessarily mean that you can follow that project through from start to finish, right? If you are in a full-time gig, that chance is much higher that you will take a project and then be on retainer for ever and ever, and can see that project grow and change hands and evolve. Versus in freelancing, what I often see is that the project that comes in outdoor is almost like a special ops Navy SEAL type, where we are specialists or experts coming in to solve very particular problem, and then we try to transition or help the in-house team to carry it forward. So in a way, it's very short burst of creativity or work, which then leads to a diversity of project, but not necessarily longevity, right? Another perks of freelancing, I think, is that it can have very good financial upside. Freelancer charge rate that is, if compared to full-time, is much higher. Now, of course, the downside of that is that you have to go and pitch for work, right? It's not guaranteed that you will have work. And so this progression of like, I will start from a junior designer to a senior designer. For a freelancer, that's much less the case. But it is a balance that if you have a new business stream in place, that shouldn't be a problem. And we can talk more about that. Throughout this, if you have any question, please just put it in the chat. Yeah, I'm happy to answer. So some of, I'm a big fan of just understanding what we're getting into, right? And understanding the rewards as well. Some of the risks, right? Not having enough work. Where do I even start? Finding the work, right? Having to deal with some of the financial obligation when it comes to tax, having your own company, how does that work? Thinking about, managing your own scope and contract and the like. So most of which have to do with the admin side. Besides the new business funnel, everything else kind of just fall under how do I run a business, freelancing. And so this is why this kind of workshop exists, so that you can hopefully get a first idea of what are things that are involved, right? And then the rewards, you can tell that I love memes. The rewards for me is very clear, and I hope for you as well, is that, if done right, you get the freedom, you get the project, you get the kind of culture and people that you want to work with. So it's a choice. And financially, right, with a consistent work stream is actually pretty great. Yeah. So we can talk about how to begin thinking about new business later on, because I'm sure there are questions around that. There's a question about that from any freelancer, not necessarily new freelancer coming into the field, right? So don't feel like you're alone. So where to start? If you're thinking about freelancing, if you're thinking about freelancing in design, there's a couple of areas that I would love to go through with you, and then we'll open up for questions. These are, like I said, new business as well as admin side of running a freelancing designing business, right? So let's do it. The first one has to do with owning an expertise. Second one has to do with like determining your rate and make sure that you have competitive rate that you can feel comfortable and good about. Finding the client and the support. So that has to do with putting a business funnel in place, putting putting a size, contract, scope, making sure that you set up your tax and your insurance in some cases, and some of the bits around the support or the admin of running the business. And then last but not least, in terms of actually doing the work, let's talk about some of the tools that are out there that really cater to remote working, really cater to freelancing. Does that sound good? We can dive into each of these in more detail. Okay, I can't see any of your face, so I'm just assuming. I'm going to assume this is good. Cool. Let's keep going. Okay, owning an expertise. What does that mean, right? I've heard people telling, thank you, baby, thank you, telling me that, oh, because I'm starting out or because I'm new to freelancing, I'm just going to take anything under the sun, and any project that comes my way, I'll take it. And I think that's true for if you're like under financial pressure or if you're starting out, that's okay, right? We've all done it. I've done it before. But eventually I would encourage us to move into a place where we do the kind of work that we're passionate about, right? And so for our collective, for example, when we interview people and invite people into our collective, it's very value aligned. So, we have people in our collective very passionate about sustainability, and that's all that they want to do. Or people that want to do ed tech, education tech, or people that want to do mental health tech, right? Inclusivity tech as well. So finding out what kind of area that you are interested in terms of industry, right? And then finding out the skill set that you want to focus on as well, right? If you're, by the way, if you don't mind putting in the chat, right? Like what kind of profession or area that you see yourself in right now, and if you're considering freelancing, where would you want to go? Or the same question, but where would you like to go from in terms of an expertise standpoint? That would help me to cater some of this conversation as well. Yeah, so Bailey is an interior design, graphic design, and furniture design in sustainability. That's really good. I would still say that even interior design, graphic design, and furniture design can be widely varied in terms of gigs, right? So Gray is about graphic design and architecture. So we have a very similar profile here, not profile, interest here. But I would argue that, if you're freelancing and building your work in interior design, it would be a very focused path for you to spend more time and get more resources on that, whether versus trying to do all of this three field. So something to think about, is there an opportunity for me to narrow down on one field? Thank you, Kels. UX design in, research in mental health, that's really worthwhile, go for it. And then graphic design, cinematography, early stage UX design. Yeah, great, right? And UI, that's great. So my encouragement for all of us is to say, okay, which is the field that I'm most passionate about, and which is the industry that I'm most passionate about? Because when you are narrowing down your focus, you get really deep, and then you'll find that Discord community that everybody hang out at, and then you'll get involved, and then you'll get gigs from it. Versus if you're everything to everyone, then your time is a little bit more diluted, and I think the success rate is a little lower there, right? And then, like I said, thank you for sharing, everyone. Portfolio and website is super important. If you don't have one right now in the field that you want, that's okay, right? If you do, great. But in either case, if you're not working on a live project with a live client, you should be working on a project for yourself, even if it's like a daily UI or a challenge, everyday challenge that you're putting together, because your portfolio will grow over time, and then that is your CV, basically your resume. in getting freelance gigs. Secondly, determine your rate. And I think maybe interior design and architecture, the rate will be slightly different because the length of project and the task will be different. But I'm sure that there are different tiers for the experience that you have as well. I'm coming from a digital design background, so this is the kind of rate that I'm sharing. Doesn't mean that you have to do that in your field. What I do encourage is that if you say, okay, architecture or interior furniture designer usually make this kind of tiers, therefore I'm going to lean into this research to help me. But very often we say, how much experience do we have in this field that we're going for, as well as how much experience do you have outside of the field, right? So if you're interested in mental health and you've had experience in health tech or something similar in psychology, to state the obvious, that is definitely consideration. I often talk to students because I teach in some of the school around the East Coast, who said, well, I'm kind of career switching and I feel like I'm wasting my time a little bit. But honestly, the kind of experience that you had before is so relevant, especially in freelancing, because freelancer is kind of just wearing multiple hats and you never know when your past experience will come in, right? Law school. Okay, welcome to the other side. Hourly or project rate, right? So this is a determination that is very personal. You can charge by hour or you can charge a project flat fee. The difference is that, and a lot of freelancers charge hourly, again, because we're often thrown into kind of a little bit of an uncertain brief or uncertain environment, and we need to figure it out, right? For some people, that can be exciting. For others, it could be terrifying to not have a clear-cut brief. But that determines what kind of rate you should, or what type of scope you should give, right? Hourly is better for, again, more fluid brief, and flat rate would be for like more concrete, more written out brief, because then you can control the kind of hours, the kind of time that you spend doing the work, right? When you're quoting a project though, there's a couple of things that I would love for you to think about. Always quote more than just design time, right? We have prepping time, we have research time, we have meeting time. What do I think about daily rate? Simon, I'm sorry if I butchered your name. What do I think about daily rate? I think daily rate is great for longer term client, so, or weekly rate out or monthly rate as well. In that case, you almost kind of a split between hourly rate and a retainer, right? A retainer doesn't matter how long you take as long as the work get done, right? I think daily rate is good. I'm doing a project right now on a daily rate, and similar to a project rate, I can control the amount of time that I spend on it. So yeah, that could work. Again, for longer project and maybe a little bit bigger budget as well. So going back, Simon is fine. Thank you. We'll love to learn the real pronunciation, but maybe later. So let's going back to quoting a project, right? Include scope that is beyond just design scope, right? Consider the length of project and your feasibility in displaying the work in your portfolio. Sometimes clients have, clients are in stealth mode, meaning it's not available to the public for a foreseeable future. And therefore they put in very strict NDA clause that would prevent designers from displaying project. It's not a deal breaker, but you just need to know, right? You need to be very clear in your scope for that. And then you should add at least whatever you do for your design scope, project management scope, research scope, prepping. always add about 20-25% on revision, right? Because work usually takes more time than we estimate. And then a note on tax. So often when you are a freelancer, well, not often, always, my experience has been that you are functioning as your own business, whether you have a LLC, limited liability corporation, or you have, or you are just doing the work and then filing under personal income tax. You have to set aside money for tax on your own, right? Versus if you work full-time with a company on a W-2, they set out some tax for you and you are responsible for some tax. But in freelancing in 1099, in this case, and I'm speaking for US, I'm not sure about Ontario or Nova Scotia, but I would say that similarly government-like taxes. So I usually set aside between 25 to 30% of my income for tax. And I try to pay quarterly tax, which is a thing where we say every 3 months, right? Every quarter, I pay a little bit of tax so that at the end, I'm not faced with something tremendous that I couldn't pay. One of the things that freelancers get really good at, and this is something you should look more into, is tracking our expenses, right? Because we're running our own business and we need to be able to track our expense and deduct relevant business expense only, so that we can take into account the cost of running a business. There's a lot of softwares out there that helps you do this on a daily basis. So going out and buy a printer for your office, right? That's a tax deductible expense in my case. Take a snapshot of that receipt, save it for tax time, right? So something to keep in mind. But at its core, it is about, this is my rate, right? This is what I'm looking at first. This is what I'm starting out with. With this client, I'm gonna quote them according to the time that it takes me, I think, to do the work, right? It's debatable whether you should tell them the number of hours or not. I think most often you should not, because then unless you're doing hourly rate, because it kind of devalues the time that you have, versus a value-driven scope would say, okay, I can do this project for $1,000 and as long as it's good and meet your requirement, it doesn't matter how much time that I spent on it, right? Then you can control your time. And yeah, pay attention to extra time outside of your design and set aside money for tax. Okay, hope this is helpful. We're doing okay on time. We only have a few more and then I'll be open for questions. A note on tax, yeah, we've talked about this already. Keep track of your expense, set aside 20-30% for tax, accounting software or receipt software as they call it. And it's good to register for an LLC, at least in the US, or a company entity elsewhere in the world, because it helps you to separate your personal versus business asset, right? And it limits your, in the case of LLC, your liability. Something that, once you have more feet in the industry, in the freelancing industry, a lot of people also get insurance, business insurance, right? Which is a business expense that you can deduct to protect, again, your work and your process. Something we can talk more about. So yeah, we talked about determine your expertise, talk about determining your rate and the scope. Where do you go to find client, right? This is where having a focus will really help. So if you say furniture design is my thing, there's like, Slack community, Discourse community, even on Reddit, Hire, where there's an entire channels on for furniture design, or like furniture designers would come and congregate there, and then you can find those kind of community to help you. So that's one, is finding online community where your expertise or your interest, your industry interest, sustainability, right, would live. I think the second one is having a few main contacts in terms of, let's say, the Taylorroo Collective, let's say an agency in Chicago, some of the bigger um, entities that would become your source of new business, right? Funnels. They will say, "Oh, I have a project and I need people. Um, can you take this one? Do you have availability? What's your rate like, etc." So if you have 5 or 6 of those, kind of just scatter around the world, um, then you will always have kind of a consistent flow. Now, where do you go find them? Again, reach out to them directly. A lot of them have like application, or join the community, or join the. I know for us, the Taylorroo Collective, we have a running application where we invite people in to interview and do a mini case, not free design work, mini case study, written work, just to see how you think. Um, but that application for us is like always open, always running. Um, Other agency, other collectives, as well as they're popping up right now because there's a lot of people going freelancing. You should definitely just reach out to them. Don't be shy. Um, we join a lot of Slack community, like queer design, women who code, quite active on like startup communities, because that's where impact work and our clients are. So yeah, like bunch of founders, female founder school. um, be active in communities, which is where my recommendation would be. And then the third type is gig platform, right? You have the working, not working type, or the Upwork type. Now, of course, their price range is different depending on where you are calling from. But they're a good source of what's out there. And you'll be surprised at some of the projects that are on there is actually quite, especially in terms of startup or impact work for us, we've found very good partners there, with the kind of project that have actually decent scope and the topic that they care about. So to sum up, right, communities like Slack, Discord, Reddit, in the areas that you're interested in, have a few of the big fish in terms of agency and collective that you can tap into, and then scout some of the freelancer platforms that more like gig economy, right? I wouldn't recommend that you go to Fiverr, for example, because I think their price is a little bit too low, especially for people who are based in the US or in Canada. Like is a bit competitive in pricing, but nevertheless is good to consider. When you do find a client, right, it's important to have a few things in mind. Always have a contract. Never start work without a contract. Understand what's the exit clause, which mean at any time any party can end this exit or end this contract. Understand the display cost, which basically is like, can I present this work in my portfolio? If yes, what can I present, right? Understand your NDA, so non-disclosure agreement, your non-solicitation, non-compete, which is basically saying what can I disclose or not disclose information-wise. Where does intellectual property goes to? Like if I design something, who owns it? Can I work with other people in your company? Can I work for similar competitors? Where does this line go? when you have a contract, ask for about 20 to 25% upfront, because even if the project goes wrong at some point, and you should always ask to be paid by milestone, or by, if you're doing hourly, by X week, which is this point here. But the 20 to 25% is to help you to minimize your risk, right? So even if the project goes wrong, you still have some cover. And a contract, especially in the US, is only valid, I believe, if there's addresses, business addresses included. So, I enter into this contract, I'm signing my name. There should always be fields for addresses. Cool? Okay, last but not least, tools. Okay, so you got your expertise, you know what your rates are. You know some of the client that you want to work with, you're landing one client. What kind of tools can you use? Should you use? There's a difference between communication tools, which is like Zoom and Slack, versus accounting tools. So Bonsai is pretty good for like single freelancer, pretty affordable too. QuickBook is good when you are growing a little bit bigger. So a collective, because we have like 20 people, we use QuickBook. Notion and Miro is very good with kind of having a wiki, is what we call like a knowledge hub, where you can add all the information in one place. Miro is good for workshop, right? Because we're working remotely, we want to be able to give workshop and get people to, yeah, thank you, Simon, to work together with client. And then one thing that I see freelancer use a lot is Toggle, which is essentially a time tracker, right? So if you work by hourly, it's good to have. So some of these tools, and I'm sure there are more, are some of the essentials, the types of essential tools that I think you should look into. Again, a communication tool, a time tracker tool, an accounting tool, and something to help you lock your knowledge, your information. Besides that, right, Google Drive is always a thing. I didn't list it out here, but probably maybe you should make this list. But Google Drive is also widely used among client and freelancers. All right. So before we part, I think, or going to questions, it's important for me to say that, it's good to have the hustling life and to do freelancing. I think I'm all for it. But remember to take some rest as well. If you are going to just work all the time, you might get burnout, and that's not healthy for anyone. So while you're out there hustling and talking to people and doing project, remember to build in time for rest. And I think it's just a good reminder to have. So yeah, if you're interested to learn more about what it is that we're doing and how we want to change, the world. That sounds cheesy, but it's true. Yeah, come check us out over here. This is us. We're a good group of people. Reach out to people. I'm sure they like to hear from you. And with that, I will pause and take any questions. You can type in the questions, or you can, feel free to unmute yourself and ask as well. It's up to you. Any programs I recommend to manage finances? Yes, so I would recommend two of them. One is called Hello Bonsai. Type it here. And then the second one is called, when you say finances, you mean like accounting, right? Like scope in and out, invoices and things like that. Yeah. And then the other one is QuickBook. I think QuickBook is a little bit more expensive. I think it's like $25 last time I checked, versus Hello Bonsai is like $19 per month. But with QuickBook, it's pretty seamless. with Hello Bonsai, it has all the tools that you need for a freelancer, for sure. But the perks of QuickBooks is that it integrate, at least for me, very easily with tax. So come tax time, it becomes a little bit of a lighter load. I think if you start with something like Hello Bonsai and you get a little bit bigger, if you work with other people and you have to pay them, then you should consider QuickBooks. But yeah, for sure. Is anybody here is already freelancing, or is this your first time going into this adventure? Yeah, still working for someone. Yep, that's okay, right? I think the last 10 years for me is always working for someone and then still doing project on the side. Is just keep it interesting, for sure. Okay. Yeah, doing a lot of personal work to fill out. Ray is saying the portfolio, but nothing paid yet. Yeah, for sure. And I think is it because you haven't had the opportunity to, or is it because you just want to build up the portfolio and wait for something good? Yeah, a little bit of both. For sure. I'm a big believer of like actually doing, when we're actually doing the work that we want to do, then we should be okay with doing it for ourselves. Meaning, you know, I spent like the last 3 years working on a tech startup, on a project for Taylorroo. Is a augmented reality measurement app to help tailors, like craft people, to interact with their customer, especially during the pandemic, to measure their customers remotely. And that's a very personal project to me because I come from Vietnam, a craft heavy country, and it's disappearing. And so for me, yeah, working on that project alone for the last 3 years was a reward in itself, even if I don't get paid. And then, through that project, I built my portfolio, and now I have used it to get similar clients in the similar space, right? So yeah, I totally admire and encourage that you should be doing that. And but at some point, when your portfolio is quote unquote good enough for you to feel confident to go out there, then you will get paid. Yeah, you'll get what your experience worth. So Amir is saying that the website is currently a school projects, mainly campaigns, taking the time to redo some of the project. Is there somewhere out there that maybe generate creative briefs that I can work on to add to my website? Yeah, so that's a good question. And Amir, remind me, what's your field? Graphic design and cinematography. Okay, great. Branded content and advertising. Yeah. So I know that, so two things. I know that there are this kind of movement for daily UI. Again, that might be a little bit more kind of digital content or digital experience, I would say. But there's also, if you talk to some of the magazines out there, in terms of like wallpaper, ad age, in terms of advertising content, right? You can easily take the kind of brief that they have from each of the article and create a brief for yourself, given that you're interested in the brief itself, right? What are they writing about? I've also seen awards as a site that has a lot of like good digital campaign work. Of course, if you're going into Dribble and if you're going into Behance, you'll get to see what other people are doing and maybe get inspiration from that as well. I'm not aware, just not yet, of a website that generate brief in terms of content and advertising content specifically. Um, but yeah, I can look more into that. Maybe we can follow up. That's a good question. Cool. Any other questions that y'all have? All right. Well, I'm gonna give you a few minutes back. Thank you for joining. Yeah. I hope you get the best out of this experience and going into freelancing. I think it's very worthwhile. And personally, I don't think I will go back to a full time. Oh, great, Imia. Go. Yeah. Sign up for daily UI. That's great. But yeah, I don't think I'm gonna stick with freelancing for a while because I think it's been a very good road. But yeah, keep in touch, and we'll talk to you all very soon. Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Amir. Thank you. Thanks, Bailey. Thanks, Gray. Have a good one.